Unterricht wird dann noch gedämmt, das besser
besser, weil das ist schon gut verrückt.
Ich glaube, die Leute sind schon besetzt, keine Stellen, weil es
Was wolltest du wissen? Ja, das ist eh okay. Ach so. Ich frage einfach mal, bevor wir aufnehmen. So, alles klar. Wir werden bereit anzufangen. Also danke zunächst mal an denen, die mir geholfen haben, die Tische wegzuräumen, damit wir hier die Stühle arrangieren können. Danke, das ist immer eine große Hilfe und ja, sollte auch gewürdigt werden. So, ebenso danke für die Empfehlung für die heutige Sprecherin, Shelley Gertan, nämlich von Miriam Salahi, die sie auf der Fischer, Entschuldigung, von Miriam Fischer, die sie auf der Comic-Con getroffen hat und uns dann empfohlen hat. Und somit bin ich recht froh, dass das geklappt hat und Frau Gertan jetzt bei uns ist, um davon zu berichten, wie sie eine Animationskünstlerin geworden ist, die auch einen Webcomic veröffentlicht hat und uns auch einige Arbeitsproben hier mitgebracht hat. Das sind Ansichtsexemplare, die bitte nicht mitnehmen, auf Anfrage vielleicht auch brauchbar.
manche ja, also der Comic, den ihr wahrscheinlich hier von der Comic-Con kennt, den habe ich auch da. Alles, was es da so einzeln gibt, aber das sage ich dann wieder. Das
Ist
sind
gut.
So sehr alte
Noch zu einer Information, das Ganze hier wird von Frau Gertan auf YouTube gelivestreamt, also das nur zu berücksichtigen. Es können Fragen gestellt werden mitten während dem Stream, das ist kein Problem, aber falls das für jemanden nicht in Ordnung ist, sein Gesicht zu zeigen, einfach nicht hier vorgehen, das ist dann schon alles. Gut, insofern bin ich dann schon mal gespannt auf die heutige Einheit. Stimmt, wir würden wie immer auf Deutsch referieren, aber es wäre für einen Livestream auf YouTube natürlich von Vorteil, wenn es auf Englisch gehalten wäre. Ist das für irgendjemanden ein Problem? Ein großes?
Englisch okay? Ihr könnt die Fragen auch auf Deutsch stellen. Oder wenn ihr merkt, dass ihr 5 Minuten rein doch nicht so gut Englisch sprecht, wie ihr dachtet, einfach Hand hoch und ich wechsle die Sprache.
Perfekt. Multilinguale Lehrveranstaltung ab jetzt. Gut, bitte sehr.
Ja?
Darf du mir sagen, was im Chat gesagt
Klar. Ich habe es ehrlich gesagt gesehen, aber nur nicht wirklich Lust gehabt, das. Ich weiß nicht, ob das jetzt besser oder schlechter geworden ist. Ach so. Komplett? Okay. Danke dir. Dann sieht man halt nicht das. Kann ich. Ja, ich sehe es eh. Okay. Dankeschön. Ja, dann. Okay, ich tue es einfach ein bisschen nach hinten und dann haben wir es. Okay, besser wird's nicht. All right. Since English is okay, I'm going to switch over now. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Miriam, for coming at Comic-Con. She also gave me a gift. I saw her in the crowd and she gave me a chocolate. Thank you. Super sweet. I'm really happy to be here. As some of you may know, I've been doing a lot of work in Austria to up the animation industry a little bit and breathe a little bit of life into it, because we have very little of it here, which is why I'm super excited, and thank you for having me here, and so that I can actually help you guys learn more about animation and then hopefully have more animators in Austria for all of the awesome projects we have planned. So before I jump in, I have prepared a very thorough presentation of my entire life up until this point. I will be showing you numbers, how much money I earned. If you have anything that you want to know, if you have a question, just ask. I'm trying to be as transparent about everything as possible, because I know you guys are looking for a career, maybe in animation, so that you know what the future could potentially hold for you. So first, for those of you that don't know me, I'm going to show you a little bit of my work. So those of you that have come to Comic-Con know that I work on Rain, which is a fantasy drama, animated show, and comic book series that's also on Webtoon. So I'll show you a little bit of that. So this is the trailer that I made for Rain a couple of years ago with music from Beth Crowley. Then most recently, I also made an animated short for Epic the Musical, if any of you know that one. It's very short. art. So that's a little bit of my most recent work. I also do some like corporate animation stuff that I'm not going to show you because, let's just say, corporate people don't really know what looks good. And so when I make it, I'm super happy that they love it, but it's not on my portfolio. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, and I'll get into more detail about what I'm currently doing with Rain and the film now, and also the steps that I took to get here. But first I want to start a little bit in the very beginning of back when I was still attending school and how I got to where I got today. So probably like a lot of you, I grew up drawing a lot, and here's my little wall in my old bedroom that showed all the old drawings. Like, they were really, really bad. Some of them have, I think, like 6 fingers, if they even have hands. Usually the hands are somewhere in the back. And here is the very first drawing of Rain. Isn't she beautiful? I don't know what kind of conditioner she uses on her hair, but I'd really stay away from it. That looks very dangerous. So I was just drawing a lot. I started writing Rain when I was like 10. The books looked like this. They were very professionally made with professional cover art and like hand bound with needle and thread, 10 out of 10 quality. And so I just always continued drawing, participated in contests. This was one where I was a finalist. I was like, I don't know how old are you in 7th grade? I was like 12, 13. And so I always tried to tell the story in very beautiful ways. This is the first comic pages I ever attempted. Yeah, they were not very good. And then as I grew up, I started learning a little bit more, doing some YouTube tutorials, some self-study, and figuring out what I want the story to look like. So I guess my journey into animation was a little bit different from normally because I went in with a very specific project in mind, which is Rain. And it used to be called Helpless, so you'll still see like the word helpless on some of the old drawings. And I was always just drawing everything inside this world. I took specific classes in school just so I could figure out like different, like I took chemistry so I can figure out like a physics, chemical way for boots to be able to fly on air. So most of my life decisions were based on what knowledge do I need to improve the world of Rain. And then I graduated school. Turns out that is not a career that I thought that I could have. So I had to figure out what it is that I wanted to actually study, you know, to earn money and actually be able to afford food. So I went and studied psychology for a whole day. Secretly, I applied to a university over summer that is in the US that taught comics and animation. It was everything that I always wanted to study. But it was in America, and it was very expensive. I did get scholarships, but not full scholarships, so I still had to pay some of it. And of course, my family, first of all, they couldn't afford sending me to America, and second of all, they were like, what are you doing? I had really good grades. I could do, you know, politics or law or medicine or something useful. But no, I decided that I kind of wanted to become an artist. But I couldn't really do that in Austria because the animation schools here, especially back then, were even more limited, and there wasn't really much of an animation industry that I could go into. So I did psychology. But I applied to the university, I got in, and then I applied to a contest. So this is the University of Savannah College of Art and Design. And they also had an online program that I could start at. And the contest, the prize money was $1,000. And it was like making concept art for 20th Century Fox for the movie Paper Towns by John Green. If anyone knows The Fault in Our Stars, that was like the second movie. And I said, if I win this contest, then I don't care what my family says, I'll find a way to go to America and get my animation degree. And if not, then I don't deserve to be an artist, so I'll just stay in psychology school and, you know, earn my rent by actual normal jobs. But I won. So, very terrible way to make life decisions. Do not do that. I could have gone very, very wrong. But luckily I won. I used $1,000 to pay my down payment for the college. And then I didn't listen to what my family said. I made my decision. The problem was I needed money. Very important problem that a lot of artists face all the time. So, before going to college, for 2 years I worked at a hedge fund, where first of all I learned a lot about like finances and managing stuff, also being the only woman in a company. So I was 18, and the youngest man was the intern with 33. Everyone else was like 45 plus. And then there was me, you know, fresh from school, doing animation in the evenings, online in university, and during the day working at a hedge fund. During this time, I was still in Vienna and studying online, So I started going to conventions. This is my very first Comic-Con. This was the comics. And those of you that have seen my most recent tables, this one is absolutely empty. I just like printed drawings in the office printer my boss allowed me to, and I had like nothing. And somehow, so on the very first Comic-Con I think I sold stuff for like 40 euros. Perfect, you can pay rent that way, right? It's wonderful. But I had a plan. I was going to publish a book, and it was going to make so much money that I wouldn't have to worry about it, and I would be able to afford my tuition. So this is the book. It sold, I don't know how many copies, but it made like 60 euros on my Morava. It's like the self-publishing platform. And like 10 of the books were sold to this bookstore in London, and I was so excited, but then like a week later they returned it because they read it in the catalog, and it's called like Happy Father's Day, and then it came, and it's not very happy. So they sent it back, but I still got to keep the 60 euros. But yeah, the plan didn't work. It didn't pay my tuition. So I saved up the money that I had from the hedge fund work, and then I moved to the US. This is the animation building that I was in all day, and then I started learning how to animate. Look absolutely terrible. This is like the very first Rain animation I ever made. Everything's like flickering. I don't know if she's having like seizures on her head every 2 seconds. This is how not to animate. And this was the very first like Rain animatic I made. I will actually show you with sound. I'm singing and I wrote the song. Absolutely terrible. There's a reason I'm an animator, not a singer, but. Please look at me and tell me you still see who I am. I didn't sing in any of the other animations. Most of them are sung by Beth Crowley, one of my most favorite singers ever. So that was the start and the end of my singing career. And then I moved to the US, so I had enough money saved up. I didn't have enough for the last semester, but I was going to figure it out. I got 2 jobs when I was there. I was teaching English at the American University, and I was also doing like equipment checkout stuff and then studying full time. So it was very hard, but really fulfilling because I got to do what I want to do among a bunch of other people that were super talented and were doing really great things. So this was like my university building. I was always like the first one there and the last one out. I don't know how they finished their work without being there 24/7, but I would see my roommate at like 6 a.m. I would come home from staying up all night animating to do like a 2-3 hour nap, and she had a normal sleep schedule, like a normal healthy human being. And we would like brush our teeth together at 6 a.m. I'm going to bed and she's going to class, and we would discuss our roommate discussions, and then I had like 3 hours of sleep and repeat. When I came back to Vienna, I slept for like a whole month. It was really bad, don't do that. But I just was so sleep deprived that I would wake up at like 5 p.m. every day, and I would go to bed at 9. And my parents were like, "What's wrong with you? Are you okay?" But I just really needed the sleep. This was my first animation. Beautiful bouncing ball. This is my second animation. Oh well, this one's the third. It was like the Pink Panther walking. Oh yeah, the flat one isn't working. And this was like our very final. It took 3 weeks, and it didn't even have hair. The girl had like 3 fingers, but it was all I could manage in 3 weeks. And in this time, I didn't have too much time for Rain, which is what I originally went to school for, but when I did have a chance, I would doodle it on all of my little animation paper while I was procrastinating my actual work. So Rain always stayed with me as like the big goal of why I'm actually here. So then I started learning how to use actual software. This is the first project in Maya that we did. So we really got to try out a little bit of everything from traditional 2D to proper 3D gaming. We did like Unreal Engine at some point. And I really loved setting environments and setting scenes and telling stories. Now with this project, our teacher said that we had to make a room that is based on a character from like a novel or a series or something, so that we have a lot of details to put into the room. And I told him I want to make a room based on my own characters. And he said, no, people have done that in the past. They failed because there's always like not enough detail. It doesn't come out good. So then I pestered him. This is probably the moral of the story at the end of the day. Just keep pestering people till you get what you want. Like 3 weeks during we had like an office hour block. I would come to him, I would bring him my books, and I would be like, look, there's like thousands of pages worth of material, whether it's published or not. I can make a room based on my own thing. And then I ended up going way beyond and making a bunch of sketches of all of the details and all of the pieces in the room and what story they tell. And then he was just like, okay, you know what, just fine, just don't tell anyone, just do what you want. And I did, and I got good grades, and it was great, and this is what came out of it. But in between all of that, there was always the looming financial difficulty of I couldn't afford my last semester. And I knew that going in, and I got like licensed to teach English at the university, but it wasn't enough. So I stayed over summer in the university and did like multiple classes at once that are normally done one after the other. But I fought with everybody and I annoyed everybody until they allowed me to take all the classes at the same time. The problem was that I had to do things I didn't know how to do yet, and this was the project. It's really funny, so I'm sure it's really funny.
It's a small village, Gaston. I've met them all.
Some of us have changed.
Gaston, no one can change that.
Beautiful masterpiece. So that project was like, we had to take a little bit of everything and do 3D modeling and rigging, and I hadn't taken the rigging class yet. So, you know, it made sense that I shouldn't be allowed to take the class, but I did it and it works fine. So just because there's specific rules and people tell you that you can't break them because it's for your own good, if you need to, just do it and take what you need. So remember this? The hedge fund that I used to work for? So the boss ended up co-signing a loan for me so that I could finish my last semester at college. Like I wasn't gonna go back, and I wasn't gonna get my degree. And then he found out, and he was like, no, you worked so hard, here's money, but pay it back. And I have 11 months left. So without him, I wouldn't have been able to get that piece of paper to prove that I know how to animate. Not that anyone's ever asked me to look at it, but I have the paper. And this was our final project in university. I'll turn it down. It was like our senior film. I won't go through it, but it was like a very happy story, as all of the stories that I ever tell. If you want to watch the whole thing, it's pretty long. It's on YouTube. It's a bunch of happy people being super happy. So I got the paper that now I am officially an animator. I don't know, nobody's ever asked to see it, but here it is. Next problem. I needed a job. And I applied to 150 positions, only the ones that I put on Excel. I probably applied to more, because I only had 2 months, otherwise I lost my US work permit, and nobody was taking me. So I did a test, and I applied to Blue Sky with 2 different resumes. It was like the same thing, but on one of them, I changed the name and I made myself an American citizen, and I came into the last 3 finalists of Blue Sky, which was like a big company. I still didn't get it, but at least, you know, I was in there some. Well, 150 job applications later, I was still unemployed. So I went back home to Vienna because college ended and I didn't want to stay there with no income. And technically I wasn't allowed to leave the country with a job, but I had my ID sent to a friend in the US. Anyway, I went home. And then I met somebody that I had actually applied to as an intern, but never got a response. And then I met her for coffee in Vienna. She was a lovely person. Her name is Shabnam Razai, and she's the co-founder of Big Bad Blue Studios, and one of the most amazing people I've ever worked with. And she said that we were just like talking for 2 hours, and 2 hours later, she was like, I love you, I'd love to work with you. Are you looking for a job? And can you draw? So then I sent her my portfolio, and she sent it to her art department, and I got an internship. problem, it started in January, and I needed to be employed by September, otherwise I would lose my permit. And it was already like end of July. So I had like a week or two. And she said that she couldn't pay me until January because they've already done their budgeting for the year and they don't have the budget for an intern. So I said, that's fine, I'll work for free. Even though I said that, she still signed a contract with $400 a month, just so that I could eat. But then when I arrived, I had no idea how I was going to do that financially without being able to, like, I would be working there full time, so I couldn't do a lot of side work. But it was an opportunity, and so I took it. 2 weeks later, she comes into the office, and she sits me down in the meeting room, and it was like an aquarium, like this glass rectangle, and all of the other people working in the office, they could see. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not getting paid, but I'm already getting fired. And she was like, I'm sorry it took so long. You're going to get minimum wage. So then I actually had an income, even though they didn't have the budget for it. She still found it because she believed that people shouldn't work for free, even though I was very, very happy and very motivated. So I've just been very, very lucky with some of the people that I got to work with. So this is some prop designs that I did. And here's a little clip of, you see these little seaweeds? They're about to be like in the show. Yeah. So I designed those seaweeds. And it was really cute because I got to see my work on an actual show. And they used a lot of the seaweeds. Yeah. Also really cute shows. They have 16 Hudson and The Bravest Night, which is like the first LGBTQ show for kids. It's amazing, you guys need to watch it. Just a little disclaimer. Okay, so then back to Rain. I had my first little professional piece of feedback for Rain when I was working at that company in New York. And at the end of the internship, it was an assignment to pitch a story. Not one that you wrote, but take some toys, you could do like Barbie dolls or something, and just put it in a little presentation and present it, and my 2 supervisors would be the ones that would like give me feedback on it. But I asked if I could present my own thing, and when the studio owners heard that, they had the entire office come to the presentation. So that was like an hour of paid company time where they were all just giving feedback to me. I think I like cried all night there. Anyway, they gave me some lovely feedback. You'll notice that the title is now Rain's Name, which is just Rain. It used to be Helpless, but she was like, no, it's not cool to say, oh, I'm going to binge Helpless on Netflix tonight. So I changed the title, and that was like one of the biggest, most important, I think, like pieces of feedback that I've ever gotten. And then she also told me a little bit of advice, because I asked her, like, what should my next steps be if I want to make my own show? And she said, go get your butt kicked, go pitch it, present it to people, just like scream it everywhere that you're trying to do this, and see what comes back. So I came back to Vienna. I had like a 3-month break because the full-time project I was going to be on started in March, and I came back for New Year's. And that was March of 2020, or 2019? No, 2020. We all know what happened March of 2020. It was the lockdowns. And so my flight to New York left a week after the borders closed. And I could have, before borders closed, and I could have still gone. But it was really risky, and healthcare there isn't the best, and I would be in a basement all alone. So I chose to stay in Vienna with my family. And I have continued applying to different pitches. And I didn't get into all of them, but I got into my first one, and I'll show you what I submitted there. So these files aren't public. I guess it's live streamed. There it is. Thank you. So this was the very first Rain pitch I ever made. This was still in school or college at some point. As you can see, it's beautiful and very professional looking. I think this is like Times New Roman. I had like some drawings. I didn't know what I was doing. So that was like the very first one. And then when I pitched it in New York, oh wait, there's one more. This was the one that I did in college a little while after that. So, it got a lot more professional. Still a little bit too much text, but, still called Helpless at this point. But I had everything that needs to be in there. I had all the characters and a bunch of art. Since I've always been working on one project, I had like a ton of art that I could just put in there, which was great. So I didn't have to completely draw everything from scratch. Oh yeah, we haven't met the coyote yet. There's so many things we haven't met yet in the comic. And this is the first proper colored comic page that I did. Still not, you know, the best, but definitely a lot better than what we saw earlier with like the black and white crappy manga looking thing. This is what I presented in New York to the animation studio that I was working at. So this is, you know, a little bit more depth to it, more color. Since I was presenting it like live, I took the text out and I just had the pictures.
And usually this is working better, showing more pictures than more text.
Yeah.
Because nobody's reading.
Yeah, you want people to focus on what you're saying and not what's written there, because then the attention will be super divided. Yeah, so there's always a difference between like a pitch when you're actually talking and you're actually there, and a pitch, they call it pitch Bible or pitch deck, politically correct, but they still use pitch Bible. Pitch Bible is the one that has like all of the text and all of the info. But
And
still,
which one does usually work better?
well, the pitch is when you're there to present, and the pitch Bible is like when you send it in somewhere and they don't see you, so you kind of need both. But still in a pitch Bible, I wouldn't like overload it with too much text, because the people that are reading it, and I'll get to that later, like they don't have time. Usually they also have like assistants reading it, so the shorter you can make it, the better. But it's always good to have it for yourself. Like I like to put a lot of detail into my stuff. So one of the requirements for one of the pitches that I was submitting to was to have a trailer. I didn't have a trailer and I had like 2 weeks. So this is the very first rain trailer I made. It's still 3D. Because I originally wanted it to be a 3D project, but I didn't really like the 3D look later, so I switched. Anyway, this is the very first beautiful trailer. First time with a new title, Rain. So I submitted that to CEE, which is this European Animation Forum, and I got a big fat rejection. First of all, I didn't have a production company. I mean, they were really nice to let me apply, but I had no idea what I was doing. I was just making things and sending them into the void and hoping something comes back. This is the pitch deck that I submitted with that trailer, back when it was a 3D project. So yeah, this is basically just a bunch of pictures. You'll see that I use the same pictures, but then with time, I like trash the old pictures as I add new ones. So it's just this growing pitch deck that's constantly being added to and evolving. Yeah, so these are all like the same. This time I have a bio. I was smart enough on my middle names on their baby sheet. So this was the, and then at the same time, or like a little bit after that, I applied to another pitching conference. This one was called Cartoon Springboard. And this one I actually got into. And the pitch was supposed to be in Valencia, where you go and there's like a stage and you can present it in front of a bunch of like broadcasters and studios and everything. And then COVID hit and it ended up being online. So this was the pitch deck that I submitted there. You'll see it's getting like a lot more life, there's a lot more color, still a lot of text, and I still have these slides in there. A lot more content coming in as I'm learning what I'm supposed to be doing. So it's really just this big process. So this was Cartoon Springboard. And since it was online, I had to send in a 10-minute presentation video of me talking and presenting the project, since the conference was going to be online and not in person. I had never done a pitch like this before. Like sure, I've pitched it to the office in New York, but I've never done it on such a large scale. And to me, this was like, you know, the end of the world. This is the most important thing I've ever done. So I filmed myself as I was practicing it. And this is really funny because I did not mean to do this, but these are screenshots of each one of my presentation videos that I just filmed myself, and you can literally see the soul being sucked out of me. I was so lost. I had like 10 different versions. You get a mentor at this conference. And I think she was also at her wit's end because I kept changing things. And she's like, it's fine, just go and just film it and send it to me, you're done. And I'm like, no. And then a mentor from New York, she ended up also looking at one of the videos and giving me feedback on that. So then I changed it and I went back to the mentor from the conference and she was just like, why is this changed again? Eventually, I had a pitch presentation. It was 10 minutes. My old high school allowed me to film in their theater to make it look like professional and stuff. Because a lot of these other companies, they had like all these fancy LED screens behind them in their studio. And then it was just me. And I was also the only one that didn't have a team, because usually it's producer-director teams, at least 2 people. Usually there's also like an artist attached. Typically teams of 3 are usual. Teams of 2 are kind of the minimum. And then here I am just like, yeah, I'm doing it all by myself. Is that okay? And they always have to give like exceptions for me to be able to submit, because you have to like put in 2 different bios for the director and the producer. So I would always have to be like, do I copy paste or can I just leave one blank? And well, they let me pitch and actually got in, so like the first. So let me show you a little clip of that pitch, which I also have not published. So it's exactly 10 minutes. I'm not going to play 10 minutes, I'm going to play the first like 15 seconds or something. So here's like a little title page.
Hello from Vienna, Austria. My name is Shelley Benton, alias Hermox, and I'm a concept artist, author, and webcomic creator. I graduated with my BFA animation from STAD last year.
Okay, yeah, it's basically just me talking on stage about this. I do a lot of talking. Yeah, so I can just scroll through it. It's just me talking and talking and talking and talking. And this was the pitch that I sent with that presentation, so like the pitch deck. Yeah, we've seen this before, it has a new cover now. Wait, this is the wrong one. Oh, I already looked at this one, right? So many pitch presentations, I don't even know which one is for which. So this was the one that I sent in to be chosen for this specific conference. And that was enough, so that would be. All right, so since then, sometime before this conference, so between me submitting to it and actually going to the conference or virtually attending the conference, I started publishing my webcomic on Webtoon. And also I want to mention, in between all of this, I did have part-time jobs that were not, actually at this point I was working at Arts Anima, the Austrian animation studio. And before that and after that I was also like a secretary and assistant at a lawyers and tax consulting company, which was great because I got to learn all of the tax consulting stuff, and the consultant would, even though I'm not a tax consultant at all, he would just have me do all this stuff because I could type really quick. So I learned a lot and he got the help that he needed and everybody was happy. But just so that you get a little bit of an idea that Rain was not making any money. Like I was putting so much time into this, and there's a lot of preparation work that goes into making your own kind of project, and none of that is going to be paid, and so you do need to make sure that you can live, because otherwise it will drive you absolutely insane. And it's nice to have like a part-time job, you go in, you see actual human beings every day, other than just staring at your computer and looking at your own cartoon characters every day. That does drive you mad. So at some point I really was going to the office for some social life. So it is good to have a bit of a balance to make sure that you can eat. Eating is very good and I would very much recommend. So as I was doing the part-time job and then I had the webcomic running, I also submitted my very first short film to a film festival. And this was part of a contest. And when I first saw the contest, it was already 3 days after the deadline, or like 1 day after the deadline. So I couldn't submit. And the next day my friend messages me. And she's like, oh my God, you should absolutely apply to this contest. I'm like, I saw that too, but the deadline's already passed. And she said, no, they just extended it. And I was like, okay, I must submit now. And I only had 14 days, and doing an animated short film in 14 days, very tight. So I developed a concept where you'll see in a second, the background is the the main thing that tells the story. It's all from one camera perspective. I could recycle a lot of the animation, and it worked. Then I got COVID, so I lost like 4 days out of the 14, so you'll see the ending, finished is better than perfect. The drawing in the very end doesn't really match, but it was done, and I actually ended up winning first place and getting like a cash prize, which is the only film festival that actually gives cash prize. And when I say cash prize, I literally mean they put it in an envelope and put it in like a Klarsichthülle, I don't know how to say that. And as I sat down with my certificate in the cinema seat, this envelope falls out. And like I pick it up, and it's like 1,000 euros in cash. And the contest was only 700 euros. Actually, no, 1,200. The contest was only for 700 euros, but one of the other categories didn't end up happening, so they split the money. And so I was just sitting there. I felt like such a criminal. I was just sitting there with 1,000 euros in cash in an envelope in this dark cinema. It was a Wien Mitte, the village cinema. And I just felt so awkward. And after that, good thing there's a bank right next door. After that, I was like, okay guys, can you like guard me as I take this? To me, it just felt like so much money. I was like 1,000 euros. Yeah, so this was the short film. I won't play the whole thing. You can watch it on YouTube. But basically, so with each scene it gets like darker and darker, and the dude is still baking. Which is supposed to say, like, you're supposed to keep trying. But what do you do if there's what do you do if there's like literally nothing left? Okay, at this point, you can't keep trying on your own. So all of the people we saw in the previous scenes, they end up coming, major spoiler, and they give him like household items. And these are my friends cameoed as characters here. And then he ends up baking again with the help of his friends. And here's the beautiful last scene where I was like super sick with COVID and a headache, and I just drew it and it was done. DIY oven. Don't try this at home. Yeah, so then they're all like eating together, and everything around them is trash, but at least they have each other, and that's it. So yeah, I won first place, and then also proceeded to win a bunch of other film festivals with it. Yeah, so that was like my first proper little short film that I made completely by myself. And then I was not satisfied with just that, so I wanted to test my social anxiety and message one of my favorite singers ever and ask her if she wanted me to make her an animated video. And you can see this is the emails that we sent to each other. I took, it was like 6 days of nervous breakdown of me thinking that I completely made a fool out of myself in front of my absolute favorite singer. And then she answers and she's like, oh my god, yeah, sure. And then we talked like money and all of that stuff, and it was Beth Crowley. I don't know how many of you guys know her, but I'm a huge fan. And we've made like a bunch of projects together since then. And this was the video. It has 1.5 million views on YouTube, last time I checked. So this is like a quick trailer. So the whole song is like 3.5 minutes. This is just a quick thing. You can watch it on her YouTube channel. So at this point I was transitioning from working part-time jobs to trying to make myself an independent like animator. And I did the IMS program, the UGP, Unternehmergründerprogramm, which taught me a lot of things on how to build your own business in Austria, all of these. We have so many rules and so many things that you just need to know. So that program was great to just teach you everything that you needed to know. So I did that for, well, while I was working with Beth, and then I did some other like part-time contract work here and there for animation. But I did often go back to little short-term, part-time jobs to kind of like fill up the bank account a bit. But it's also really good to know that, even if you're not currently working a part-time job because you don't need it, just to know that you have the experience and the skills to get one if you really, really have the urgent need to make money and pay your rent and all of that stuff. But for now it was alright. And then over summer I participated in a contest with Webtoon called the Call to Action Contest. Spoiler, I didn't win. But I printed my entry and then I added some stuff and I made a one-shot of Rain. A one-shot is like when you have a long comic series. Sometimes people don't really want to start reading it because that is a lot of stuff in the very beginning. And also, since you've never written an ending, because the thing is so long, it's also hard for publishers to know whether you're even capable of writing an ending. So I took a scene from season 3 in Rain and I changed it a bit and edited so that it's something that people can read without knowing anything about the story. It has like a beginning, a middle, and an ending. It's not a cliffhanger, it's just like its own thing. And then I took that to conventions, I sold it online. I've had to reprint it 6 times now. So that was also really nice, and I translated it to German and sold it here too. It's really funny that a lot of people, I stopped, I have like some German copies left, but I stopped ordering those. Because people always ask me, what language do you write in? And I say I write in English, so even the German-speaking people end up buying the English copy. And I was like, well, what's the point of having that? Because pretty much everyone here, everyone here speaks English. And it's so much easier because the sentences are shorter, and every time I translate it into German, I have to make the speech bubbles bigger and like the text smaller. I'm just like, English is just so much simpler for stuff like that. So then I approached Beth and asked her if she would like to write a theme song for Rain. So we kind of switch up the roles this time. And she actually did, and that's the trailer that I showed you in the very beginning. And at this time, I was getting a bunch of really sweet comments on YouTube. It was like the first proper animation of Rain that I ever published, and so the response, I was just floored, and it was just so sweet, and I was crying at every single comment that was coming in. However, I had spent the last 4 months going to Starbucks every morning to animate. And I mean 12.5 hours a day. It opened at 9 a.m., it closed at 9:30. I didn't even take a lunch break. I would grab like a cake or a snack there and I would just stay. Unless my friend came and pretended she was in the area and like slapped down a computer and said, we're gonna go have some lunch now. But, so I financially calculated everything in advance. I knew I could do 4 months with all of my loans, like student loan and everything. I was fine, and after 4 months I finished. The video was up. I was just so done with everything. At one point, I was looking up going to medical school to become a doctor, because that was like my plan B. And I needed to have something in my hand to show for Rain, because I was also applying to funding from Austria, and they were constantly just like, who the heck are you? Like, no, we're not. And so to prove to them that I was capable of doing all of the things that I wanted them to trust me with, I made this trailer. So it went according to plan. What I didn't plan for was the fact that I'm a human being, and doing 4 months, like I didn't even go to birthday parties. If my friend had a birthday, I would grab a gift, I would go, I would bring it, I'd have like, I don't know, 1 cup of tea, and I would leave again and go back to my Starbucks. The nice lady that was my barista was so sweet and gave me like free refills on my jasmine tea all day, so I would just like buy a tea in the morning. It was like €2 something, and then she would just constantly refill it. And she even, like, I would approach, and the thing would already be on the counter, like she knew. Yeah, so that was hard. And at the same time, I won an award with the music video that I made for Beth. The very first one, not the Rain one I just finished, because the festival circuit takes a while to kind of catch up. And so I was invited to the Vienna International Film Awards. I was not in the mood for that, because I just wanted to be sad, because I was just so done. But, you know, I put on a pretty dress and I went, and then the YF interviewed me. The Seitenblicke had me in like 3 seconds. It was a 10-minute interview, maybe 5 minutes. But in the end, they literally just cut it to, I am so excited to be here. That's it. Okay, well. But I was, that was my first like red carpet event. It was really fun. But I needed money. So that's not what you're supposed to do when you have a burnout. You're supposed to like relax and go hang out with your friends, go to the camera a little bit, which I did go for a day. So I worked for American Express, which has absolutely nothing to do with animation. I was doing like technological checks. And I also started teaching film at Atelier 4. And that is actually something I did want to do, because I do want to, so that's kind of why I'm here, kind of teach people the stuff that I learned at my university and just bring that knowledge back home a little bit. So I was really happy about that part. So I was just working to fill up my bank account. The comic was on pause, everything else was on hold. I was just filling up my bank account at this point. And then a lot of things happened, one after the other. I would just say that it's a bunch of really lucky little domino stones and a bunch of lovely people. So yeah, I met Alan Menken, which was really awesome. He also has a rain book. It's right here. I don't know if he actually read it or not, but he was very sweet and he took it. But at this conference, I met a very wonderful person. Her name is Vanessa Donnelly. That's her. We bonded over the fact that she liked my purse, so I told her where to get it, because good people don't gatekeep, and then she went and got one, and then we became best friends. So, in the middle of my wonderful burnout, I got a message from her, and she heard, like, through the text messages that I was really sad. And she was like, you know, what's up? And I was telling her that nothing's working, I'm applying for funding, I'm doing so much stuff, but absolutely nothing has really been coming back. Like, sure, the YouTube comments were great, but that doesn't really keep me afloat for long. And she said I should come to the Berlinale, which is the biggest film festival in the world. And I'm just like, I cannot afford, first of all, a hotel in Berlin during the biggest film festival in the world that Steven Spielberg was a guest attendee for. Like, everything has been booked for the entire year. Like, sure, the train ride to Berlin is not the most expensive thing in the world, but like a hotel and a ticket. And she was like, I have a friend in Berlin, I'm staying there too. I'll ask her real quick, I'm sure you can stay at her house. So then I ended up going to Berlin, getting keys to an apartment from a girl that just met me 2 seconds ago, sweetest person, and then I went to the Berlinale and I snuck in. Sorry, I hope nobody from the Berlinale is watching this, but I took my pitch deck. This is my pitch deck, right here. So this is like the print version of the pitch presentation. So I took a bunch of those. I went to the Marriott Hotel, which is where the conference was being held. They stopped me at the door and asked me for my ID. And I have this in like a bag, and I'm like, oh no, I'm not here for the conference, I'm just here to make a delivery to this person in this room. Where do I go? And she's like, oh yeah, second elevator to your right. So I got in. It was like 300 something euros to get into this, it was a film market. It didn't actually end up bringing me anything, but you know, I got in, it was cool, and I met some people. I gave a bunch of people these pitch decks. I just like stuffed it in front of their faces. I didn't end up talking to any one of them again, but the next day, Vanessa and I went to watch an animated film. And because the universe hates animation, this film was playing at freaking 9 a.m. And in a festival, there's a lot of events that are like until 2 in the morning. And we were like, do we really want to go? We're going to be so tired. But we said, okay, it's the only animated film, we're going to go. So the film was A Greyhound of a Girl. It hasn't come out in cinemas yet. I don't know when it will, but it was the most beautiful film, even though it was for kids. 10 minutes later, I was just crying. It was just like tears all over. And I didn't know Vanessa that well, so I didn't want her to know that I am in tears. She was going to think that I'm some kind of crazy weirdo. But a little bit into the film, she turns to me and she's like, Shelley, do you have another tissue? So at the end of the film, the filmmakers were there because it was the premiere. And this person right here was one of the screenwriters. His name is Dave Bingham, and he's going to be important in a second. So because I love the film so much, I had to go down there and tell him how much I, as an adult person, wept like a little child. And we exchanged contact info, and I told him that I'm working on a project too. Would it be all right if maybe in the future I would get in touch with him for potential screenwriting advice? He took my card, and usually when someone takes your card and says they'll email you, that's a polite way of saying, I don't want to give you mine. But he actually genuinely didn't have a card on him, and he actually messaged me the next day. I've loved him ever since, and then I applied for more funding, and of course I did not get it. This is all of the Austrian kind of funding that I applied to. Well, now some of it is green, we'll get there. But I got rejected from the Austrian Film Institute for funding on writing a screenplay. It was like 12,000 euros. And the reasoning was that it's too brutal for kids and not adulty enough for adults. So I call and I ask what that means, because yeah, it's for teenagers. It's not meant for kids, and it's not for adults either. Long story short, I ended up being put in touch with the boss of the entire agency, and he was really nice, and I'm explaining to him that like anime is a thing, and teenagers watch a bunch of animation. And he was just shocked, like he didn't know this. He just genuinely didn't know this. And he invited me to come to the office and tell him all about it. So I go into the office with all of my like statistics memorized of how important animation is for like teenagers and young adults. And we spend an hour just talking about this. And he says genuinely thank you because he had no idea that this is a market and that there's teenagers watching animation. I invited him to Comic-Con, he hasn't come, but I'm working on it. So he can kind of see about like the age groups of all of these people. And he said, that's great, but in order to build a project like this, you need a kind of skill set that Austria genuinely doesn't have. And I was like, okay, cool, thanks for asking. So here's my like 40-page business plan, and here is like, I think at that point it had 500,000 views on Webtoon, so it's proven that there's an audience, and you know, all the pitch deck and all of that stuff, and then I learned all of the skills with the trailer to prove it. And he was just like, you know what? Okay, apply again, and then we'll see. So I applied again, and then I actually got an acceptance. Yay! It only took like 100 tries and fighting with 100 people. So that was, and that was this one. That was Öffi Stoffentwicklung. It was 12,000 euros plus 3,000 top up to get an editor on board. So I needed a story editor, and I reached out to a bunch of people because I didn't know if he would actually say yes to this. If you remember, that's Dave Ingham, that's the one we met in Berlin in an earlier slide. And I reached out to him, and while I was waiting for a response, I messaged a bunch of other people that I really didn't like. I mean, the other people were all great in what they do, but I just didn't feel that like creative connection with them. And then Dave answered, and you know, me and my anxiety looking up in my email, I was like, okay, he's gonna say, sorry, too busy, whatever. And he's just like, yeah, sounds good. When do we start? So that's this beautiful thing here, the film script, which I can only show you, but you can't actually read yet. It was 130 pages until he came and saved it and sliced it, and now it's only 100. And then I had another problem. Well, first of all, I was in the Korea for receiving the first like ever animation funding in Austria for this kind of project. All right, then I had another problem. For the next stage of funding, I wasn't allowed to be just little old me in my bedroom doing my animation stuff. I had to have someone on board that has done cinema productions in Austria in the past so that we can apply to the bigger funding together. So I needed what's called a senior partner. That was a tip given to me by this funding agency. So while I was writing the script, I was emailing a bunch of companies in Austria to figure out, first of all, who I liked and who liked me. And there was one in particular that I felt a really good creative connection with, and someone that I felt like I could trust for 5 years with my little baby. And so every 3 months, it was so annoying, I think, every 3 months I just sent him an update like, hey, I was in the newspaper, or hey, the script is doing well, and he was waiting for the script to be done to make the final decision. And so I just emailed him like all the time to make sure he remembered who I am, and so that he's annoyed enough so he just says yes, so he can stop. Well, I didn't stop texting him because now we're working together, now I message him all the time. But in the meantime, I was always, I do like 10,000 steps ahead before I do what's actually necessary, just because it's so hard to do this in Austria where nobody really has done this in the past. So I went and I pitched the project to Cineplex, Constantin Film, which is the company that basically owns all of the cinemas in Austria. Because one of the steps, not the one I'm currently at, but one of the future steps is that you need a cinema to sign off, or like a film rental company to sign off on being interested in playing your film. Because if not, you can't get the big funding, because then the funding people will be like, well, nobody wants to show your film, so we're not giving you money to make it. So I was really lucky, and I met one of the executives at this company at a conference in Vienna where I was invited to speak. It was at CIMIX, which just happened last week again. Really cool conference, you guys should go next year. It's from the Wirtschaftskammer, and they bring together a bunch of creative people each year. And you can approach executives, but usually if you approach executives, they'll be nice and then they'll tell you to go your way. But we were on the same panel. And at the end, this was so embarrassing, at the end of the panel, like we're sitting in the front row as other people are talking, and then when everything ended, people started lining up to talk to, I thought, him. And so I wanted to talk to him really quickly, and we exchanged information. And then I got up to let the people talk to him, and as I got up, I'm just like face to face with a bunch of people that are actually there to talk to me. And he saw that, and so he did message me, and because of that, the kind of respect levels were also a lot higher, so they actually invited me to come and present the project. So it's really important. You could be the same person, but if you saw me at Comic-Con sitting behind a table, you probably would not invite me to come and talk. So yeah, I pitched it to them. Haven't received like an official yes or no, but they know it exists, and I'm gonna annoy them until they say yes. And then back to Dorfilm, they also said yes. So this I actually haven't announced on Instagram yet because we want to do like a proper social media post, but Rain has a senior partner now, and they're really awesome and super supportive, and I can really see myself working together with them for the next few years, hopefully very many years, because we will be really, really annoying to each other for a long time. So then I continued presenting Rain everywhere, like I'm just constantly at conferences and pitching it and telling people to give me a lot of money to make it. And also, at this time, I have also come back to like a part-time job in an office for the last, at that point it was like 6 months that I did a little job to, replenish the banks, every now and then. Because once it takes off, it'll take off, but for now, you kind of have to just push through and get there. So now this is the most recent Rain pitch deck. You'll see it has like nice little updated logos because I'm no longer completely by myself and now I actually have partners. Yeah, so that is kind of the entire story summarized in an hour for how I got to where I am today. And there's still a lot of work to be done. I'm also in the Wirtschaftskammer, in the board of animation, and we're constantly fighting for better conditions for animators in Austria. Just recently, I was talking to the Film Institute because I've been pushing that there is no Kollektivvertrag for animators, which means that you can pay an animator whatever the heck you like. I had a job offer for 1,600 euros before tax for a full-time position. Don't say no to things like that, because if you can make more working a regular office job and they don't train you, if they train you into something that's different, that's like an apprenticeship, you gain something that's different. But that was just really very low, and you deserve to be able to afford your rent. So I said no to that, and now I'm fighting for better actual regulations in Austria. But of course, me fighting is also not paid, but I think it's very important to build more of an industry here so that people have a future, so that not everybody wants to like start their own business and make their own studio, because it's a lot of not creative work. I think at this point I spend more time on Excel than I do on actual animation software. And a good industry has enough space for all kinds of people, so the people that want to do their own thing, that's cool. But those people, we need to make space for the people that really want to focus on the craft, really want to focus on the art, the animation, to have the stability to just, come into the office, into the studio, to do their thing, and to know that every month they will be able to afford their rent. So that's what I'm currently working on. We have submitted to the next round of funding, and we're going to get the answer in a month. So until then, I'm like holding my breath and hoping. And after that, the plan is to start development and start building the actual studio behind the project. Hopefully the film will be done in like 4 years, 5 years. Something like that, and then bring in a bunch more people so that it's not just me and my little wrists doing stuff. Yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask now. Also, I'm the kind of person that I don't remember my questions in the moment, and then I go home and I'm like, oh no, I should have asked that. So here's all of my social media. I'm very friendly. You can ask me anything. You can send me portfolios to look at, and if I have time, I can glance at it. So, if you have questions afterwards or something specific that you want to ask that I may not have covered and you may be too shy to ask, just feel free. I'm very friendly. Reach out anyway.
Well, first of all, I'd say a random applause is in order. Really, thank you for coming here and talking about this and your career, which is amazing. Dang. I hope that the next 4 years of your life will be so much successful. I mean, they will be work intensive, of course, but if we can watch Rain 5 years in the future now, with you in the room,
yes,
that would be the dream.
I would love to. You're all invited to the premiere.
Yes.
we'll need a very big room because I've invited like half of Austria to the premiere at this point, and I don't even have a film to show. But you know, fake it till you make it. We'll get there.
So yeah, you're saying pretty good. You're giving good advice. I mean, you say there's rules, but if you know how to bend them, you can work with this as well.
Yeah,
So-
don't let rules stop you. So if you're submitting somewhere and you know you have good stuff, scratch that. You don't. I don't think I have. Nobody thinks they have good stuff. If you really want to do something, just go and do it. If they say you need a second person, sometimes I invent one. I'll tell you a story. This is not a little off the charts. So I was a guest at a lot of Comic Cons, but never the one in Austria because they knew me already and they just thought, oh, I'm not cool enough. So I got myself a talent manager. His name is Thomas Williams and he lives in New York, so unfortunately if you call the number he will not answer because he's probably asleep. His email happens to be the same as mine, it's just office@lost.com with a different signature. But when I started writing about myself in third person, signed by a classic man name, Thomas, very strong male name, people started inviting me to Comic-Con to speak at panelists. I was the same person, nothing about me changed, nothing about the text I wrote changed, but you know, it just sounds better. So if any of you need a talent manager, Thomas Williams is happy to be at your service. And sometimes you just need to, do what you need to do in order to get what you want. I really believe in being so annoying that people just want you to shut up and they just give you what you want. So yeah.
Which is also something you're really shining. You're a fighter. You know how to fight for things. And you have the strength to do this. I mean, even if it takes 12 hours in a cafe working so that your own health gets low.
Don't do that. Breaks are important. I just made a plan for my next animated project. I can't reveal what it is. It's like a short. It's going to take like 2-3 months of work. And I made a schedule where I blocked out every Sunday because I was going to take breaks. And then I realized I was making this on a Sunday. So already I failed, but I'm working on it. So take breaks. It's very, very important. It took me like a year to get out of burnout, like up and down, up and down. But for the first 3 months, I was just crying all the time. Like I would have a cup of hot chocolate, and I love hot chocolate, and I would just cry. Like, why? Like I'm not sad. I love hot chocolate. I'm happy. Everything's good. No, my body was just like, well, it's on me. Yeah, don't do that.
Then other thing is you have good friends. And you have people you can depend on, and who can depend on you.
A good network is super important, and yeah, I have some really amazing friends, and also just strangers you meet along the way. I met a girl in Berlin a few weeks ago because I was invited for another conference, and so I won a film festival in St. Petersburg 2 years ago, and one of my prizes was a trophy. I've never gotten like an actual trophy before, and I was so happy. They tried to ship it twice, but because of the political situation, you know, it kept getting sent back. And I couldn't attend the actual conference because there are no flights coming from here to St. Petersburg right now. So I told this just randomly to this girl in Berlin a few weeks ago, who was from Russia and who was gonna go home for New Year's to Moscow. And she was like, I'll message you when I go, and maybe I can bring that back for you. I knew this girl for like 2 hours, we had lunch together, and now actually she did go pick it up, and now she's back in Germany and she's gonna ship it to me. So it's really not the people that you expect that will end up helping you sometimes. So once you open yourself up to allowing other people to just pick up where you need help, that's something that I really had to learn because I was always like, I gotta do this myself. And if I can't do it, I can't ask other people to do it because it's not their problem. It's not their fault that I want to do animation. But people appear from places and then they help you and they bring you chocolate to conferences. So that is super important. Can I ask some questions? How many of you guys are into animation specifically? Okay. What does everybody else do? Oh, okay, comics. How many of you do comics? Oh, very cool. Web comics or print, or do you don't care, just comics?
Traditional and digital.
Very interesting. Any game people here? Yeah. Mobile games, video games. Yeah? Very cool. Animation and games are very good friends. It's like kind of a lot of the same stuff. And everybody else that didn't raise your hand, what do you do?
Reference class.
Print?
Printing with like printing machines where we make images and just roll them
Wow.
on cups.
That's cool. That's really cool. I haven't heard that one before. Oh, so like a really good mixture of a bunch of stuff.
We also have ceramics, I think traditional drawing, like modern painting. There's sculpting, graphic design.
Oh well, you just have everything that's creative. That's really cool. That's cool. Yeah?
Do you think it's possible to make a film without burning out?
What, by yourself?
No, generally.
Okay.
Yes, it'll take a bit longer,
Yeah.
but yes. I would like to say it is possible, and I will try from this point forward. I think it's just especially hard because in Austria we don't have an animation industry. Typically you would take a project like this to a local studio and they would like work with you and the structures would be provided. Like you're not supposed to do the creative stuff and do the business stuff and do the actual networking. Like that's usually full-time jobs of specific people. And it's kind of necessary in Austria right now, but hopefully by the time I'm done it won't be necessary for you anymore. Because the structures will be, existing. But the issue here is that there's just not any existing industry to throw myself into. But I'm working on it. So I would like to believe that, yes, it is possible if we take good care of ourselves.
Which is the thing that amazed me as well. You said, okay, you came to this office telling him, hey, there is actually a market for teenagers in animation. He didn't know that, okay? And how much planning did you actually do more than that?
Yeah.
Because if you plan 5 years in the future, what is the actual work our people are doing?
Yeah, well, the thing is that nobody in the past has tried to make a project like this here. So if there's like 100 people applying with teenage animation projects, they're going to be like, huh, what about this? But since I was really the only one, they generally don't get animated projects at all for the cinema. So the short films, there's a lot of short film people applying, but for real like feature film, like really long ones, there's really just the general like little kids, which is also really cool that we at least have that, but it's like the 3D animated kids cartoons, like Kunstschule we worked on a couple years ago. So it's this like 3D animated kids stuff coming out. So when they see that, they know, families are watching it, kids are watching it. But I think the issue is just that the people making the decisions are not the youngest. A lot of them are very friendly, which really surprised me, because he did invite me and he was genuinely interested in listening to what I had to say. But they're not the people that have watched anime before. They go to watch animation with the little kids in the cinema. And that's the only thing they really know. So they think that, because they're working with taxpayers' money, so they have to be careful with what they do, because it's public funding. So they don't want to just fund something that they're sure nobody's going to want to watch. Although if you look at the numbers of how many people watch the movies, how many of you have watched a movie made in Austria in the last year? 1? 2? 3? You went to the cinema to watch like an Austrian production? Like a proper movie. Yeah. So not a lot of you. So the numbers that are coming back are not that great. Sometimes there are some really cool things that Austria produces, and we're getting there. But I think the issue is just that nobody's really tried. And I haven't been trying for that long. Like in the grand scheme of things, of Austria having a film industry, which is like, what, 100 years or something more, nobody's done it before. So if I'm trying for like a few years, that really isn't, for me it's long, but it really isn't that long. And things have been bending and things have been moving, and now I'm on the board, so I can change things more. And now at least I have more of a network, so I know the people making the decisions, and most of them are actually really, really friendly, and they're happy to work with me and make it better. So I have hope that it will get better in the future. But I think the issue is just that nobody's really done it before.
But if anybody can do it, then I guess it will be you.
Yes, I hope so.
If you could see yourself from 2009 in the little booth from the corner, what would you tell yourself today?
Just keep going. You're doing everything right. There is no right or wrong way. There's also different ways to get to where you want to go. So just because this was my path and somebody wants the exact same thing that I want, doesn't mean that this path will work for them. It's just like one method. But that also means that no matter what path you're on, if you're just generally walking towards the destination you want, you'll get there. So I would tell myself to just take a breath and chill a little bit because you'll be fine. There was also a convention I went to that I've never gone back to, but I spent an entire weekend there and I didn't make a single sale. And I was selling bookmarks for like 50 cents. I was just there to talk to people about my art, which wasn't very good back then. And I made 0 sales and I paid like 100 euros to be there that weekend. And that was very demotivating. And it was really hard to, this was before I moved to the US. So it was just like, okay, nobody likes my stuff. Now I'm going to spend so much money studying this. But if nobody likes my stuff, then I have no future in this. So, you get into like this little rabbit hole of cycling and thinking. But to every problem, there is a solution. So if you're a bad artist, cool, go learn how to draw, go practice. You'll get better next year. So to anything, I would say, like if I was to talk to my younger self again, is that it'll be fine and you'll get to where you want to go, hopefully in the future. So just relax and, well, don't relax too much because then I won't be where I am today because I did a lot of things. But it might be okay to go and spend a weekend with your friends instead of working on the phone. Although I'm a bit guilty of that right now as well, but.
Yeah.
How actively do you seek out conventions or Comic Cons, and how many times a year do you attend Comic Cons?
I go maybe like 3 or 4 a year. It really depends. This year, because we were doing the co-production deal for the film, I missed all of the deadlines for the applications for next year. But typically I do like 3 or 4 a year, and I try to vary the locations too. So I usually do Comic-Con Vienna. Animator is like 50-50 chance to get in because they like pick a lottery out. I went to Animator this year. Well, I guess it was last year already, and that one was really cool. Yeah, so I try to. It's really nice. The Comic Cons, for me, they're not really a way to like earn money, but it's more of I get to actually see the people that are reading my stuff online. And just recently at Vienna Comic Con, this was after I announced the co-production deal. There was also an article in the Kleine Zeitung, and I had just announced that on social media, so all of the people from Vienna knew that I had kind of reached another step. And then there were just people coming to me at the table, and I was like halfway crying in the bathrooms every other minute. They were just coming to me and saying that they've been following along, and they've been watching, and they're rooting for me, and that they're really hoping that I succeed and stuff. So it's just a way to, it's really nice to fill up your little batteries. So I go there completely empty, and then I just like charge from all of the other artists, all of the really friendly people that are there. When I came back from Animator last year, I was so tired because I had done 3 conferences in a row in 3 different countries, and Animator was the 3rd. Well, that's not a conference, it was a Comic-Con. I came back at like 11 p.m. at night. The next morning I had work because I was working in the office at that point, and then after work I had a panel at Animator. And I had prepared everything on the train and everything was good to go, and as I get there I realized I forgot my charger. And at these panels I usually open up all of the animation software, so my computer drains really quickly. But I just mentioned to one person, like, uh-oh, I forgot my charger. And then someone told it to somebody else, and somehow this dude that I've never met before, that I don't know where he came from, but he just shows up with the charger. And he's like, this is my personal charger, please make sure that you keep it safe. I'll come back in an hour to pick it up, good luck. I was just like, oh, I'm home, these are my people. It was just so nice and so friendly. Because I was really stressed, because without the charger I couldn't hold and I was just so done with everything. But yeah, then I strolled through like the artist alley and talked to all of the other artists. Usually we don't get to talk much because we're all at our different tables and we don't get that much time together. So now I was just like strolling back and forth and it was just really nice.
And if I have like 3 questions.
Go for it.
First, what inspired you? Your art you would assume?
Yeah, Erlans. So when I was in middle school, and I kind of made this book, and I wanted to put it up online on like DeviantArt, and I was doing a lot of very personal art, and I didn't want normal people in my life to find it, and I was in school, didn't want to like, be bullied or all of that stuff, which didn't happen, but also a little spoiler alert, after I switched and everybody knew who it was, nobody even cared what I did, so you don't really need aliases. But I needed an alias at the time because I wanted to keep things personal and make the art that I want to make without having people in my actual life like judging me for it. And I wrote a short story, it was 6th grade, and I wrote a short story in English class. I don't even remember what it was about, it was probably really bad. But the main character's name was Erlans. I have no idea where the name came from, I just made it up. I know it's not the most glorifying story, but I just kind of made it up, and then when I needed a DeviantArt username, that was just the one I went with. And yeah, it doesn't have any cool meanings, it's just sounds.
Yeah, to be honest, you both answered one of my questions I wanted to ask previously. If you were a teacher,
Yeah, I was. My account's still there. If you want to look at all the old cringy art, it's Erlans.
Yes. And secondly, what are like your favorite media, like favorite movies, animation, stuff like that?
Oh, So, let's see. I'm gonna have to think about this one a little bit. So my favorite books, my favorite novel is Crime and Punishment. I wrote my entire like extended essay, so it's like so I didn't do the Matura, I did the IB, which is like the Matura, but a little bit different. And as part of the final class, we had to write, like the VWA basically. So I wrote mine on the 5 environment types used in Crime and Punishment and Great Expectations. I really loved like environments and stuff, so I really loved analyzing literature too. So I think my favorite like proper book would be Crime and Punishment. My favorite films, I'm gonna have to think about that because my answer will change. I'll probably go home and be like, oh no, I missaid something and I actually like something else better. One of my favorite animes is Full Metal Alchemist, is really good, or what's that one? Code Geass. I love that one because it's like very twisted. I like the stuff that isn't, you know, happy-dappy. Sometimes a cute happy-dappy rom-com is cute too, but I like to get lost in the more complicated. Or more recently, Link Click was also really cool. Had a lot of really good stories. So kind of that genre. In terms of what are the media? Is there films? Recently I've been watching Outlander. That one was also really cool. It's like a series. I'd say it's like a bit like isekai, so it's someone who gets like transported into the past and into a different life. And there's a lot of like historical accuracies and stuff, so it's also really cool.
And my last question was, what inspired your main character of your movie?
Rain. So some of the characters have like bits of me in it. Some of the characters do not, and those are really hard to write because I'll be like, okay, what would I do in this situation? Cool, this person's not doing that. What do people around me do in that situation? Okay, they're also not doing that. So like, I really love exploring different kinds of personalities. So what inspired the story in general was childhood trauma, always a good one, but also that I would always give Rain like my issues, so that the little characters that were running around in my head, I would always give them like a feeling or a problem that I had, and I would make it really bad, like it was really exaggerated, and like if my finger hurt, someone had like their arm amputated, and it was like really exaggerated fantasy stuff. And then I would watch them deal with the problems. And it was really fascinating because I learned a lot about myself in the process, that a lot of the problems that I perceive to have are actually things that I can solve. Some things, of course, I couldn't solve because, you know, as a child, you're living with your family or whatever, and you don't have that much control over your life. But even then, I could control the way that I reacted to the problems and self-reflect and figure out why these problems bothered me so much and like what it is about me and my perception of the world that makes this so problematic for me. And then I could apply it. So it was like solving my problems without feeling like I have to go looking for the solutions, because all these fantasy characters did that. And with time, it evolved into something completely different. Like now, they really have their own problems that I've never really had in my life and nowhere near. But still, in order to make it authentic, I do try to put at least little pieces of ways I felt in the past, or ways that I think other people felt into the story. So I guess it's a mixture of exploring what's possible and also to ask really interesting questions to myself. Like one of the questions was, how would I build a utopia? And who in the past has tried? And so I would kind of experiment with, obviously Rain is not a utopia, everyone is like sad. And it used to be called Helpless because all of the characters were based on a specific thing that made them helpless in the world, and their character arc was overcoming that by the end of their little arcs. So that's where the old title came from. So it's basically self-exploration and seeing what the world could be. And the answer to that is the world is what we make it. So if people wanted to make other people happy, they would. But in order to do that, they first have to be really content with themselves. So you cannot really wish other people well if your entire life is in shambles. And if you're like homeless and your house is burned down and you have nothing, and then somebody across from you has built like this nice mansion, you physically cannot be happy for them because you are missing a very important piece in your life, which is shelter, and that's a basic human requirement. So within the story is also my firm belief that you really have to fill your own cup first, and you have to be happy with yourself and accept yourself, because only when you are satisfied with who you are, then can you start and actually love and accept the people around you and others. Yeah?
Are there any programs that you could recommend, or any programs that you think are important to get to know?
Like
In
software?
a professional way, yeah.
So it depends on what you want to do. So for animation, it really depends on the country and where you are. In animation, there's kind of three big ones. In America, it's Toon Boom Harmony. In Europe, it's more TV Paint, although they use both, I guess. In Spain, they do use a lot of Toon Boom too. So Toon Boom, TV Paint, and in Japan, it's Retas Studio, which is like Clip Studio. The Clip Studio is the Western version of Retas. Retas is a lot older. It looks kind of like Windows 97. But if you know one or two of these softwares, you can really easily learn the others. So as long as you know how to animate paper, you're fine. In terms of 3D, Maya is dying. I would just stick to Blender. But I mean, once you know Blender, you know it all. Blender and Maya have a bit of a different interface. But so yeah, Maya, Blender. What else is there? The Adobe software, Photoshop, Premiere, and After Effects, depending on like, what you want to do. Do you know specifically like what branch you want to go into?
Not really, just
Yeah. So those are, I think, good. I think that's enough. It's a good starting. And also for 3D texturing, if you're into that, there's Substance Painter, which is the software you use to like color the 3D animated, 3D modeled objects and characters. Oh, and ZBrush for modeling characters. It's a lot of software.
I know all of them. So.
You do?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Perfect. So if you know those, typically you shouldn't need to know all of them, because if you do 3D modeling, you do 3D modeling, you need to know how to animate and stuff.
What is one advice you would give to a webcomic creator?
Don't publish until you have a few episodes lined up. So I started, I had nothing, I just made my first episode, and I was like, yeah, I have an episode, I'm gonna post it. But then people start expecting updates, otherwise you lose them. And then I didn't have enough. I ended up like redoing everything, and I was not happy with my drawing. So wait until you have like 5 episodes done, and don't do like 1 episode at a time, but really make them in batches. That way you can go back and fix things if you want it to be prettier. But if you're really doing a week-to-week schedule, I mean, some of the rain episodes I'm very much not proud of because I was in a week-by-week schedule, and with the job that I had and doing everything, it was not how beautiful can I make this panel, but it was like, if this is the way it's drawn, will people still understand what's going on? Does it have color? Wonderful. Does rain look at least a little bit like rain? Cool, we're good to go. That's not a good way to do it, but sometimes it's necessary. And you'll see a lot of, even the Webtoon like originals, kind of suffering quality as time goes on because they run out of buffers and they have to do the weekly. So don't do that to yourself. So my advice would be to finish a few episodes and then have like a nice schedule going on. And it also doesn't have to be weekly, it can be whatever fits you best. So one point I was doing every other week, but as long as it's regular and as long as people know when to come back, I think that's what's really important. And the art isn't that important. I mean, people start reading it if a certain minimum threshold is there and the story's good, you're fine. People read for the story. They can read the not professionalist art as long as the story's good. So don't stress it and just go for it.
All right, and I guess we close here. Thank you so much for coming and giving us your advice and your career story.
Oh, and if you guys want to flip through this, like you can look at it if you're interested in, like this is the pitch deck. Please don't like read this book because it's like really cringy, but it's there. Yeah. And you can buy these. I do have some German ones here if you want them. The last German ones I will not be printing anymore. I think I have one English one and like 5 German ones. This is the Crappy Book that sold a wonderful amount of copies. Like I became super rich off of this book. And the rain script. Oh, and also if anybody, I forgot, if anybody wants a print for listening to me to be annoying for like 1.5 hours, if you want to come up, I can give you one. You can pick. I have 2 different ones, and I can sign them for you if you want to do it.
Well, thank you very much. Ich habe leider Freund gesehen und war sehr schade, dass er nicht mitgekommen ist. Ja. Und was wäre dann in der Zukunft? Wäre ein eigenes Studio, glaubst du?
Yes, I did art.
Ja,
einfach die Namen markieren. Was wie heißt du? Mira.
Sehr altes Auto. Bei mir zu Hause. Ich bin heute das draufgekommen, dass es schwierig ist.
Ja, natürlich. Ich bin ehrlich, ich glaube, damals war ich einfach ein bisschen weil ich bin jetzt nicht so lange in den Bereich gekommen.
Ja.
Comic-Industrie in Österreich sind ganz viele alte Menschen, die ganz viel Geld haben. Also so
Ja.
schöne Comics. Also es gibt tatsächlich ein paar sehr coole Comic-Künstler, aber die sind alle gepublished. Aber das kann man nicht nachfragen. Also da habe ich jetzt deutsche Comics. Eine eigene aber da alles jetzt aber es gibt die Austrian
Ja.
ich weiß aber nicht, wie das so aussieht.
Aber es war eigentlich früher mal die Lehrer.
Echt?
Immer wenn ich bedenke, wie realistisch existieren auf der Welt Comic-Teams. Cool, na dann kannst du auch.
Machst du vielleicht Sinn? Such den Wettbewerb. Sag, wenn das passiert, wenn ich das schaffe. Oder irgendein Step
Nein, bitte nicht.
Aber das war eine super Lektion auch dahin. Wenn du etwas willst, dann arbeite für etwas und dann ja, lege es in die Hand von dem, was du kannst.
Ja. Das ist ein bisschen wie Flipping a Coin, wenn man das dann in die Welt rausgibt, dann weiß man plötzlich, was man will, bevor die Antwort kommt. Weil ich wollte gewinnen, damit ich das machen kann. Ich habe wirklich gut gesucht, zu überleben, das zu machen. Also ich wusste eigentlich, was ich will. Aber man weiß es einerseits, aber andererseits will man es eben das irgendwie zu leben oder machen. Also schlecht, wenn du so machst. Für ich, Comic-Team, cool. Part-Time-Job, damit du leben kannst. Und dann Comic-Team aufbauen. Comic-Cons gehen, aber du kannst du so machen.
Und wenn irgendwas der Laden.
Oh, Dankeschön. Do I talk to my characters in my mind? Not as me, but the characters talk with each other in my mind. So. Yeah. I do have an inner voice. I know there's some people that don't have an inner voice, and that's so scary.
Das glaube ich nicht. Selbst Tolstoi hat schon in seinem Werk geschrieben, ich kann nicht glauben, dass Leute sprechen dauernd und sie sprechen auch mit sich selber, wenn sie nicht sprechen. Also, ja, das glaube ich nicht.
Nee, also ich rede zwar nicht als ich mit meinen Figuren, aber die reden halt gut.
Ja.
Wenn ich mit denen rede, wäre es ein bisschen weird, weil ich halt nicht
The ones that you give me trauma.
We're not doing that, no. I mean, I also gave them life, so they should be grateful.
Yeah.